Welcome to the explainer. Right, so I want you to imagine we're stepping into a sealed, completely forbidden vault. We're blowing the dust off records that Imperial authorities argued should absolutely remain buried forever. Today, we're opening these archives to investigate one of the most chilling cosmic mysteries in the entire Warhammer 40K universe, the Orpheus transmission. This whole thing, this entire mystery hinges on one single number, 12. See, the final transmission detected on the very edge of Imperial space was only 12 seconds long. We're not talking 12 minutes, not 12 hours, just a 12-second broken signal flickering through the darkness. But those 12 seconds contained a message, so profoundly disturbing it literally shattered the Imperium's understanding of reality. Because the voice on that static-filled recording, it identified itself as the commanding officer of Battlegroup Orpheus, and this was an absolute bombshell. Imperial records claimed this massive fleet had been completely destroyed, that it vanished during a heavily censored campaign over 3 centuries earlier. But the transmission didn't just report that they were alive, it reported that they were still actively fighting. Okay, let's dive into this. The initial reaction from the Adeptus Astra Telepathica was just total dismissal. They classified the signal as warp distortion, basically assuming it was just some delayed temporal echo of a dead fleet. But when they finally managed to decode the full message, the terrifying truth could just no longer be ignored. Section 1, The Silent Frontier. Let's jump back in time to see how this started. The Administratum, in all its rigid bureaucratic arrogance, originally authorized a massive armada of Navy squadrons and Imperial Guard to handle some gravitational anomalies and vanishing merchant vessels out in the Segmentum Pacificus. Look at these mission goals. Find the cause, eliminate the threat, restore Imperial control. It's just painfully naive. They figured they'd just show up, suppress some local pirates or a minor Xenos threat, and head home. This straightforward by-the-book mentality set the expedition up for an absolute disaster. For the first few months, things actually seemed pretty normal. But then the timeline takes a horrifying turn. It escalated from silent merchant vessels to entire human populations simply vanishing. Millions of people just gone. And when investigators arrived, they didn't find blasted ruins or chaos corruption. No, they found functioning power grids, food still sitting on tables, children's toys scattered in silent plazas. Just the eerie perfection of cities left completely intact, but entirely bloodless and empty. The true scale of the threat finally revealed itself when a missing patrol cruiser turned up. It hadn't suffered standard battle damage. The debris showed impossible molecular-level destruction. The armor plating had essentially ceased functioning before impact, which signals a massive, incomprehensible technological gap. The Imperium thought they were preparing for a conventional war, but they were facing something entirely different. The Terra really peaked when one heavily damaged vessel actually managed to return from the dark. The boarding teams were expecting survivors, but instead they found pure madness. The crew was technically alive but suffering from extreme psychological trauma, massive memory degradation, and just uncontrollable terror. And through their fragmented whispers of impossible structures and moving shadows, every single survivor repeated the exact same chilling paranoid warning. They weren't being hunted. They were being watched. Now, what's really interesting about this is the navigational data pulled from that maddened cruise ship. It revealed a total paradigm shift. Locations that flat out did not exist on Imperial maps. Enormous regions of space were concealed behind gravitational distortions. When survey teams pierced these veils, they found evidence of ancient hidden civilizations. So the burning question immediately became, who had hidden these star systems, and why were they trying so hard to stay hidden? Well, when the Imperium finally forced an engagement, a frustrating, wildly chaotic war broke out. The enemy warships violated every single convention of known naval architecture. They used unidentifiable materials and impossible movement patterns. But their most brilliant and devastating tactic was recognizing the Imperium's weakness. They didn't target the heavily armored battle fleets. They targeted the stretched logistics networks, wiping out convoys and supply depots, just slowly strangling Battlegroup Orpheus. Section 2. The Ancient Megastructure. Let's move to how this builds because this is the real turning point. Deep within one of those hidden systems, exploration vessels found a dormant artifact larger than a continent. Not a planet, not a space station, but an ancient megastructure predating human civilization by unimaginable spans of time. The battle for this megastructure became the bloodiest of the entire campaign, and then the artifact activated. Surviving records describe gravity collapsing and reality itself distorting. Sensors failed, time warped. In a blinding flash, Battlegroup Orpheus simply vanished, swallowed without a trace. The Imperium sealed the records and history just moved on. So the crucial point is the horrific time dilation revealed by that 12-second transmission 3 centuries later. For the Imperium, 300 years had passed. But for the men and women trapped within that distorted region of space, only a few years had gone by. They hadn't died. They had been trapped in a state of continuous, endless combat, fighting a war the rest of the galaxy had completely forgotten. When rescue forces finally reached the coordinates, they found a grim, absolute nightmare scenario. The surviving warships had become floating fortresses of desperation. Crew populations were now descendants born in total isolation. Command structures had fractured. There was subtle warp contamination from the psychological burden of endless war. But the most terrifying discovery was their tactical reports. The unknown enemy was abandoning previously occupied regions. They were gathering. They were mobilizing. This brings us to a paradigm-shifting question that chills inquisitors to their very core. Hidden archives eventually revealed that when the megastructure activated 300 years ago, it didn't just swallow the fleet, it transmitted something. What if this entirely unknown, highly advanced enemy was never actually trying to conquer Imperial space? What if they were simply guarding the artifact, desperately trying to prevent it from waking up? Because the artifact did wake up, and it sent a signal not to local systems, not to the Imperium, but far, far beyond the galaxy, straight into intergalactic darkness. The existential dread here is staggering. It implies those hidden star systems and molecular tearing weapons weren't some empire expanding. They were a defensive perimeter trying to hold the line against whatever it was that just answered that ancient call. And this brilliantly illustrates the true horror of the Orpheus transmission. The very last confirmed message from the survivors wasn't a call for help. It was a hushed, repeated revelation. The enemy is afraid. Think about that. For centuries, the Imperium thought they were fighting an unstoppable, cold, calculating threat. But the truth is, the most terrifying civilization humanity had ever encountered was desperately terrified of something else. Which leaves us with one lingering, deeply unsettling thought as we close up these sealed archives today. The original disappearances weren't a conquest. They were preparation. So I leave you with this. If a civilization capable of erasing entire populations without a trace, a force that can tear dreadnoughts apart at the molecular level, is terrified of a signal sent into the dark, what exactly is coming to answer it?